program is sponsored by Sue Minahan.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you leading-edge astrology conversations through a journey of soul growth patterns connecting astrology's energetic cycles. Get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining Talk Cosmos. Insightful conversations awaken your consciousness for soul growth. And I'm Sue Rose Minahan, the founder of Talk Cosmos and astrologer. And today is May 21st. The sun just went into Gemini today. So that's very exciting. We're at that cusp between Taurus and Gemini. And there's so many planets still in not Gemini, but Taurus. The big one, of course, is Jupiter. Jupiter began its year's journey in Taurus as of the 19th, just a few days ago, until next year on, I believe, the 21st, 25th of May. So it's a whole year that we have this powerful, big energy. So today, our conversation with a special guest, it is the third week. So when you tune in, we have a special guest, and we're repeating the same guest we had last time because he's so wonderful, Israel Ajose. And I'll tell you all about him in a moment. He's from the UK. So we bridge a lot. The world is expansive, and I'm so excited here to be in Hawaii across the waters, 2 oceans away, speaking to England. It's very... it's exciting. So, meaning that we began talking about Jupiter in Taurus last time on April 16th, which was the third week of the month. And now we're picking up on Venus, who rules in modern astrology, because there's the esoteric too. And we're going to get into that today, of Taurus. So this is exciting, and thank you so much for tuning in, and subscribe for the newsletters and to the YouTube. And of course, we're always on podcast because, oh, that's right, we don't have a recording. It's just me. Okay. Thank you, Nathan. Maybe you could get my slides up. Okay. So here we are, and I'll just have that, the official. And Israel is the president of the Astrological Lodge of London, and that's his, and I'll show the bio in a moment, but you can find him at astrolodge.com UK, and he has his own website, Sacred Planets. And Israel is the current president, as I had said, of the Astrological Lodge of London, the oldest, I think, lodge there is, started by Alan Leo. And he's a full-time practitioner and teacher of astrology, tarot, philosophical, and esoteric teachings. Studies with complete full honors in psychological astrology at the Center of Psychological Astrology in London with Liz Green. He's a dedicated student, teacher, astrology and tarot, and he combines many facets, the traditional, the medieval, psychological, and Vedic techniques, providing guidance, answers, and consultations to students and clients worldwide. And if you want to contact him, email him at astrologyofthesoul@gmail.com. And many of his studies and practices include cosmology, mythology, occult sciences, Kabbalah, shamanism, and divination. Hello, Israel.
Hi.
Once again.
Yes, great to be here once again. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Always a pleasure to be here. It's almost like my second home, if not my second home. But it's great to be here. I'm very thankful, very appreciative of you having me once again. So yeah.
Oh yes, indeed. And how, just generally speaking, how is your spring over there in London?
Yeah, it's coming along okay. Today we had a bright day. It's been a little bit cloudy here and there in the last couple of days, but
Sure.
it's been a few raindrops, but nothing too heavy. But it's not cold. It's certainly
Ah,
getting
nice.
warmer. So yeah,
It does make a difference. Spring
yeah,
does speak up, and that's how I
yeah,
feel in Hawaii. I just
yeah,
come
yeah.
from Seattle. But this really focuses in on why I noticed as I was researching this, the
Mm,
question, why do we have a planet named Venus?
mm,
And it is after the goddess. And it's because all around the world, it's such a predominantly
yeah,
bright, yeah, in the sky.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Most definitely. I mean, this is the time. Although the sun has just, today just moved into Gemini, we have just finished the last month of Taurus, which is the sign ruled by Venus. And this is where, although the spring equinox or the vernal equinox, where which is known as spring, um, we do start to see the buds and the plants starting to spring up from the ground. But it's actually during that Taurus month we really start seeing those flowers, which are
Mhm.
ruled by Venus as well, really start coming to, they start blossoming, they start coming to life. We really start seeing the beauty,
Yeah.
of Venus really starting to take shape. They say Aries is the zodiac sign that brings the initial spark, that initial start. And it's actually the energy of Aries that, when the sun now moves into Taurus, now warms up the soil for Taurus, for her to be able to bring out her beauty in the best way. So yeah.
I love hearing this. You tie
Mm.
together instantly so much of the mythology because they're great
Yes.
lovers. They sit on either side of
Yeah.
Earth. We have Venus
Yeah.
and Mars,
Mars,
the
right? Yeah.
interior and then the exterior. And they do create this beauty of flowers. And I
Mhm.
remember in one of her lovers, immortal Adonis, if
Yes.
I'm saying it right,
Yeah.
when he died, she cried. And so the flower becomes the anemone, I think,
Right.
of the
Yes.
red
That
color, the
red color. Right.
flower of birth. But here too, one of the factors that's kind of tying back to Venus, which is so beautiful,
Right.
and the name relates to desire and
Yeah.
therefore attraction, but it said that in this particular one, the
Right.
planet is covered with acid clouds, which we know,
That's
ironically.
right.
But I
Yes.
began thinking, here you were mentioning of England,
Right.
as we are here in Hawaii,
Yeah.
the clouds. And I
Yes.
thought too, isn't it true that, especially when we think of spring coming from the earth, the
Yeah.
death,
Yeah.
and then which some of the older mythology brings up
Yes.
in the birth,
Mhm.
that it's like unveiling the veil, like the
Yes.
clouds. You have to
Yeah.
get down, or else the pain of love, you have to get through it to get to.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. No. Most definitely. It really makes sense how symbolically and mythologically how the Venus placements or cycle or her signs really bring out and emanate that aspect of who she is, which is the beauty, the art, the things that correspond to our sensual being. Yeah, it's and she is the also, let's not forget, the most the brightest of all the planets
Yes,
that we can see in the heavens as well. So I think that
right.
is also telling us something about who and what she is.
It is
Yeah,
love. When
yes,
you
yes,
consider, they say nothing is without that love, which gets
yeah,
phrased as compassion or caring, but it's
yeah,
not just us, like the initiating
yeah,
spark of Aries, but it's that compassionate love that we
yeah,
need,
yeah.
and all and
I know
everything.
she can be seen even presently. She can be seen in the evening sky as yeah, as an evening star. After
Yes.
the sun has set, we can see her. Just after the
Hmm.
sun is set, we
Well,
can see her there in the heavens.
I think the
Which
next,
is great.
yeah, Venus star point will be in Leo, which I did
Yes,
not bring up in for this
right.
conversation, but that's when they're exactly together. It'll be in
Yes,
Leo, and she'll be retrograde. So she'll come up as a morning star.
that's
And
right.
then I
That's right.
think she's, yeah, setting. We could go, here's another focus, is
Yes.
why myth, because I have many books on mythology. I
Yeah.
dearly love it. And it is really a study. It's like, the stories
Oh,
tell
most
us one
definitely.
layer. But
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero's Journey and so
Journey.
many.
Yes.
So in that, Bill Moyer, who they had a great, I think, yeah.
A dialogue. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And he asked, why myth? And so I thought I'd repeat just to start off with people, because it is so important to astrology too.
Yes, definitely.
And he mentions, this isn't something current in our society to think about this literature of the spirit, which I loved his bringing that out, but that it does bring up all our experiences and our soul experiences that we resonate. And this is what I love, that they're clues to the spiritual potential of human life.
Yeah, definitely. Myth is the attempt to it serves on many different levels, and myth serves as a platform for us to be able, and as a record for our for what is happening in our lives and in our surroundings. Mythology also is expressing the human psyche. It's a reflection of the human psyche in terms of what's going on, why we do the things that we do. Mythology is the story in a poetic way of human life and life experiences also as well. So mythology is extremely necessary. There is no civilization who do not have their myth, their cosmology, their mythology stories. And although the stories may not necessarily be literally, quote unquote, factual or true, but they are archetypal truth. They're speaking about archetypes. They're speaking about, we could say, energies, and about the human soul.
Consciousness,
the human soul, the human spirit in its journey. And myth is good because it puts it in a story form, because story form is much more poetic, and that's how we remember things. That's how the soul records things. It's how the human mind actually works. It's much more better to put it actually in a much more poetic, mythological way, because it registers deeper. It lasts.
I like this.
Forever.
That's very well expressed, Israel. I appreciate it, because when I think of story, I realize that it has a motive. And by able to see these incremental plot points, you could say, one can consider, oh, boo-boo, that's the moral of it, or that's the lesson of it. And it's a way of telling us, the talking stick. That was the stories and the verbal ways of telling us. And sometimes I think people think it has a big, stories do have a beginning, middle, and end, yet they evolve. It's not just one interpretation.
Oh yeah, so many layers. And that's the thing with myth. Myths are timeless. They apply to any moment in time. They cannot age. They are forever, because they are speaking about that, various archetypes, which we are interacting with on everyday today experiences.
Yeah, you had mentioned so many things, and of course you were talking about Psyche, who is one of the large mythologies relating somewhat to Venus, and which again and again gets supported with what a powerful part of our, it's not divided like sometimes we do here, but here, just thinking about the lineage, the expansion of the fact that the planet is seen throughout the world, like the moon and the sun, and there's so many stories. So going back in our heritage of Western worlds,
Right.
which kind of morphs into the East too. But
Right.
and this is before Common Era, but Ishtar and Inanna, and I
Right.
was interested that. Of course, that goes back to Mesopotamia. And for those people that wonder, that was the area between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in the Middle
Right. Yeah.
East, with
Yeah.
the cradle of civilization
Yeah.
5,500 years ago. But there was the Hittite empire that, and the Hurrians is new to me as I was researching, but very the same with Hittite. And anyway, these are old, but Ishtar meant often goddess, because they'll mention, so just like Venus later in
Yes.
Rome, Ishtar this, Ishtar that.
Right.
And you begin to realize, if I'm talking about water, I'm going to talk about different forms of water.
Exactly. Different aspects and different aspects of our being, different aspects of our manifestations, is what they were alluring to and connecting with, so that we can understand that it's just like a human being. There are many facets of us. There's not just one. We function on many in the same field or in the same context, but we can function on many different levels. So it was the attempt. So we could be speaking about, let's say, for example, a football game or a baseball game, but there are many different facets or parts of that football game, or different people playing different positions. They're playing on the same team, perhaps, but there's different positions. So, it's
well put. Yes, that's right. It's all in reference. It's in,
yes,
and it's a language that I think that's the beautiful thing. I'm so glad to have discovered this interest that you are so steeped with, because it's not like Campbell said, it's not something always frequent in our culture. So be able to discuss it. And for those that are interested, just a little bit of more about the names here that you can Google. But Sauska, and there's many ways of saying that, was the name in Hittite or Hurrian, and very much associated with Inanna. And of course, Inanna is part of that Gilgamesh, the first novel as it's put out, which is a whole study of itself.
And the story of her going into the underworld. And I'm wondering also if the known Sauska is maybe linked with the Hindu equivalent of Venus, which is Sukra. So I wonder, because I do know that there, there's a lot of cross cultures, and there's a lot of influence from the Mesopotamian region, the ancient Persian region, and those regions of the Middle East that lent itself to India's building and civilization also as well, and vice versa. So, and back then, philosophers and teachers and gurus would share information and exchange. So I'm wondering whether if there is maybe
that's interesting.
Language connection there in terms of where it's coming from. But
I totally resonate with that, because I too realize that as we go behind the timeline of today into the before, especially back to pre-recorded, when civilization was beginning, or even prior to that, that these ideas, especially, we call it Middle East for a very good reason. It does bridge those terrains, and people traveled, and the ideas communicated, and then they describe it in their fashion, just like anybody tells, about anything. I will have to check that. Oh, so here we have a little bit more about Sauska. There's so many ways of saying her. So she was the highest goddess of that area, and I focused on her a little bit here, just for briefly, because because of this. Well, she's associated with love and war, which Venus is. We don't think of Venus as that, but
exactly.
Aphrodite is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She. That was the part of her either being the morning star or the evening star. So every time when Venus goes retrograde, and Venus goes retrograde for approximately 40 days. And this is where their connection with, in the Bible, they speak about reigning for 40 days and 40 nights, or Jesus fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. There seems to be some correlation there. But when during her retrograde, when she becomes a morning star, this is the time where the ancients were very observant, and they realized that every time Venus became a morning star, which means that she rises before the sun in the morning, that countries went to war. So that was the aspect of Venus that was
I
warlike.
thought so. Yes. And in fact, I have that here
Right.
later because we're working, folks, on a beautifully impromptu, creative fashion. But the Mesopotamia also
Yeah.
made such a, well, we'll come back to that. Excellent.
Yeah,
Yes,
no
indeed.
problem. Yeah.
That it's very true, though. They were like two distinct, not different. I think
Yeah.
the ancients must have known that they were the same, which because
Yeah.
you read different
Yes.
opinions, but they had different names for it, just like we
Yes.
do. We have
Exactly.
different kinds of ice, see, snow or something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Depending on which facet or which side of Venus it is that they were talking
Yeah.
about. So that's why.
Because love.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, going back to Aries or Mars,
Right.
Aries, Ares, folks,
Yes.
for the Greek form of it. But we think of it as war, but it's really that compelling energy to assert, which
Right.
might get in the way of somebody else. But it's more of your own independent choice.
Right.
Whereas Venus is what we find attractive, because
Yes.
that's a survival technique, is the beauty, the flowers, the birds, everybody
Yeah,
is,
exactly. Exactly.
meaning that really, what am I trying to say here? That they're both, you can defend both. People can
Right.
defend for love, or they can defend for their cause.
Exactly.
And so why we divorce that idea that Venus can't be anything but lollipops and roses is
Exactly. And as on some level, it's showing us that there is a duality, or there's two sides to everything in life. So for love, there has to be pain as well. For happiness, there has to be joy that goes alongside with it. And just like what you said, because Venus essentially represents the choices, or the kind of, or the way we make or go about making choices. Venus is that ability. Venus actually represents the ability to be able to make choices. I like that, but I don't like that.
with the Libra side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very true.
We go into a shop or wherever, we want to buy some clothes. Oh, I like that jacket. Okay, that one's not to my taste. Well, that's your Venus at work. And same goes also for partners as well, whether it be male or female. But what we find attractive, but our ability to say, well, I find this person attractive. I'm attracted to this person.
Yes.
But I'm not so much attracted to this person. That is our Venus being exercised or going to work there in terms of what we find attractive. As they say, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So yeah, based on where our Venus is placed, it's going to ignite the kind of people and things that we are attracted to, which we prefer. Venus is our preference. What is our preference?
Yes. And again, the etymology, later there's one, because the word Venus, Venas, meant desire. And it symbolizes now, as we consider this evolution of it. But I kept this slide up because also there are, whether it's the Mesopotamia and this, just as two indications, that there's and also with one of her children through Hermes, which is Mercury, of like Psyche, of the thought, that there is the masculine and the feminine. And it to me, it really emphasizes the unification or the foundational purpose I don't know if purpose is the right word, but that this is an energy consciousness that's regardless of our physicality.
Yeah,
It is just
yeah,
part and parcel, but it
yeah,
comes up quite a bit with quite of the older
yeah,
mythologies, because there's one where one of those more the older forms,
yes,
and maybe it was this one, Sauska, had the power of making men into women or women into men.
man, right,
So
yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
really
that's yeah,
more of an embracive way of
yeah.
looking at the world,
Yeah, and that's also her connection with Hermes, because Aphrodite and Hermes did have children, and that's where the word hermaphrodite comes from,
Yes, and I
which
have
is
a
actually a
yes,
combination of
right.
hermaphrodite is Hermes and Aphroditus
Yeah, it's
together.
common to both. It's
Both,
just
yes,
is. It's its
yes,
own
yes, yes.
energy.
So it's the
That's
both
right.
masculine and feminine, like what you're saying, or
Yeah.
that two sides of Venus. Yeah. So
Yeah, we have a lot to learn that
yeah,
how associations. Here in Greek, she
yes,
was known as Aphrodite, and and this is one of the, we don't have too many minutes here before our break, but one of the major mythologies considering her, and that was her father was Uranus, the
right,
sky god,
yeah,
who had been mating with Gaia, the earth
right, yeah,
goddess, creating life in every form.
yeah,
And uh, but one of the children, Saturn, which they
right, yeah,
had several children, and Gaia plotted to stop that and
right,
castrated
right,
Uranus. And it's so interesting to me how coming from that was like his most noble deed of true essence, that this form of true desire,
yeah,
with any of the ambiguity of morality, of
mm,
judgment, but just pure desire for
mm,
beauty and for as a positive force,
yeah,
creating this energy that would remain through
yeah,
and forming in the water. So
right,
that there's so many ways that it's interpreted, but uh, generally through the semen or the foam of
yes,
with water, with emotion,
yeah,
Poseidon.
yes, exactly, yeah. And it's quite interesting that she came out of, or was born out of the waters, out of the ocean, or of Poseidon, so to speak,
Mhm.
and she's exalted in Pisces,
Oh,
which is the water sign, which is the Poseidon. Poseidon was the god, of the oceans, of the waters.
yes,
So it's no
of
coincidence that
compassion.
yes, exactly, and that's where she is also exalted. So we see the connections and the how she ties into, whether it's the signs that she rules or where she's exalted, how again her energy is
Yeah,
being expressed. And
and
I
it.
also, yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
just to say, I think it's quite interesting also as well, because in terms of, I mean, in a sense, both Saturn and Saturn, who's Kronos, and Uranus are kind of both involved in bringing her about. It's Saturn castrating his father Uranus, and the blood from the castration spills into the
Yeah.
water, and outside the form Aphrodite comes. So it's quite interesting how the relationship
You know
with
what
Kronos,
reminds me?
yes,
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, because as far as mythology goes, we could go on, and now we have a break
yes,
here coming up. But there was a Titans, and that was Saturn was
right,
part of the Titans.
that's right, that's
And
right,
then when he castrated his father, time, in other words, created time is what
right,
essentially
yes,
what he
yes,
did from
yes,
this sky ever
yes,
going onward
yes,
action. And from that becomes love, or
right,
comes so many the sense of desire and what we think
desire,
is
yes,
beautiful.
for sure.
But with the Olympians, which he's the only remaining Titan, which
Yeah,
have to do with his children, which is Jupiter and all
yeah,
the rest of them, or so many of them, is that with the Olympian gods,
yes,
humanity, instead of having it decreed
Right.
by the roles expected out of perfect order, which
Right.
Saturn represented, was more the will, the free will, that we
Right,
make
yes.
our choices,
Yes.
through
Exactly.
which you're saying with Venus, her other side of ruling both Libra and
Exactly. Yeah.
Taurus.
What choices are we
Yeah,
making?
we have the consequences. We can grow, but
Exactly.
the accountability comes here. Yeah.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely.
Yeah, it's great.
Which is quite interesting, because that kind of reminds me of the war of Troy.
Oh boy, we have a
You know,
lot. We'll have to come back.
come back. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
this is good.
definitely talk about that,
Okay.
because yeah,
Oh,
choices a lot
goody.
to do with it.
It does. It does. Oh my goodness. This is wonderful. Thank you, everybody. This is May 21st, beginning of Gemini. And I am with Israel Ajose of the UK, London, Astrological Lodge of London president and astrologer of sacred planets. And I'm Sue Minahan. We'll be back with Talk Cosmos, all about Venus and more. Thanks. We'll see you. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the period of Gemini. By leaving a cycle based on physical form, integrated through spirit, the energy of Gemini connects spirit with matter, focused on communicating and defining the external. Gemini is a mutable air sign signifying flexibility. Gemini dually focuses upon teaching and learning in order to synthesize the world one lives within.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to the Inanna Institute of Living Yoga, we cover the world of animals. This week, May 28th, it's an encore presentation. Tune in to hear our last healing show with Dr. Nels and Linda Rasmussen. Together, they helped our listeners and their animal friends with emotional, behavioral, and physical issues. And if you tune in, you can receive a surrogate healing just by following along. Hope you can join us for Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Talk Cosmos brings you leading-edge astrological conversations with hour-long programs each week on KKNW. The show goes live every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on Facebook and YouTube, along with daily chats throughout the week on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you click like and subscribe buttons so you can get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or, if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. So, grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
You found us. Maybe you've been guided to listen. Alternative Talk 1150.
Oh, that's great. Well, hello, everybody. We're back again, and this is May 21st. But before we go back to our talk about Venus, who rules Taurus, because Jupiter will be there for the next year, Israel, do you have something with your lodge or any lectures or classes that you're giving, or something you would like to share with everybody?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, the lodge is again, we have Monday evening lectures. We start at 7 p.m. UK time, GMT time. So that's continuous every week. We do break for the holiday periods. So you can go on our website, www.astrolodge.co.uk, to see the upcoming talks. For myself, I am starting an astrology course for beginners, for anyone who's interested, and I will be teaching both traditional, Hellenistic, medieval, and modern contemporary astrology, and that will be starting on the 15th of June. So if anybody who's interested, you can also give me a shout at astrologyofthesoul@gmail.com. That's astrologyofthesoul@gmail.com. So
that sounds great.
So for upcoming.
Okay, and that's of course everybody can find it on Top Cosmos. We have
Yes.
Israel's mentioned there. And I will mention, I don't know how this is going to pan out, but I was just contacted by a podcast in New York for a short interview, 5 minutes, about Top Cosmos. And it's called the Interviewing Elite Podcast. So that's very exciting. We'll see how that works.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, okay. Well, back now, we're talked about Troy. And also I was thinking, we also talked about this family genealogy. And I was noticing my notes. So because the 3 Olympian brothers that was divided after the new order, you might say, was Pluto for the underground, Jupiter for the heavens, and Poseidon or Neptune for the oceans. And so interestingly, all 3 of these really have a lot to do with Venus. Of course they would, because love, what else? And desire, what else do we have? But, well, let's see. I guess we won't get into that. Maybe we'll go to the next one and see, because we want to get to that Trojan War. Well, here it is, because right there in mythology, her son Aeneas, I forget who she had Aeneas with, but he fled Troy after the war, which is a very long war and changed the world and mythology. And Venus was very involved with that too, because she kind of started that. We didn't get into that part of the story.
She did. She and again, it's interesting because we've been talking about choices, which is where the whole Trojan War, actually, that's where the root of it started, where we had Aphrodite, we have Hera, and we have Artemis.
Vesta.
Artemis, who were, there was somewhat of a beauty contest, and whoever was seen as the most fairest or the most beautiful was going to get the golden apple. And they asked Paris to judge the contest. As a matter of fact, it was Jupiter, Zeus, who was first asked to pick who was the most beautiful, but he obviously was a bit too smart for that. He knew that, listen, I'm not going to get dragged between a war of these 3 ladies.
The goddesses, right?
He said, no, it wouldn't be fair if I pick. So let's pick somebody who can be a bit more kind of objective. So he picks Paris. Paris was on the hillside,
and
looking
I think,
after his flock.
Wasn't Paris also the son of Spartan, I think, or the Spartan... the Spartan ruler. At that time.
That's right. Yes, that's correct. Yes. So he picks this. He was a young shepherd, a gorgeous looking boy, and he says, "Look, you judge the contest." To which he does, and Artemis. Sorry, it wasn't Artemis. It was Athena.
No, Athena, because she was going to offer him wisdom.
Right, that's right.
Strategy.
Exactly, a strategy and wisdom. And then you had Juno, Hera, who was Zeus's wife, also as well.
For power.
Exactly. And then Venus says, "Look, if you pick me, I'll grant you any woman you want." She just stripped naked in front of him, and he chose that, and obviously he somewhat fell in love or fell for one of the king's wives, Helen of Troy.
Well, if I might jump in, thank you so much for this, because Helen, intriguingly, and this could get beyond, but is also a twin with Clemestra. Anyway, the point is that the Gemini twins, Castor and
Pollux. Okay.
That there were 2 sets of twins that came from the mating of the Queen of Sparta with Zeus, and one was mortal, one's immortal. Of course, we have the twins, Castor and Pollux. But Helen is one of the sisters. She's a sister. She's the immortal. And here, Paris, At any rate,
Right.
it's choices. It gets down to choices.
Exactly.
About focus here.
And yeah. So Paris picked her,
The most beautiful woman in the world.
beautiful woman in the world, and but yet she was married. She was already married to the king.
Yes, little detail.
Yeah. She was married to the king of Sparta, of Argos, and Sparta. So she was married to that king, and that's what set the war off. Because his brother, which was Agamemnon, now says, "Hey, are you gonna let you're gonna let Troy, come and take your woman like that?" And so that's what built up the whole war. And we hear about the Trojan horse and stuff and all that stuff. That's where all that, and it was a war that went on for 10 years.
Yes, it did. You know what's fascinating is the repetition of horse. Also,
Menelaus, that was her husband's name. I just remembered. Helen of Troy was married to Menelaus. That was her husband.
And he was of, I forget, because there was Sparta and Troy. And of course, Sparta was part of Greece that was very warrior oriented.
Islands. You had Argos, you had Sparta, you had Troy. So you had these different, you had Crete, you had all the different islands, which are still pretty much there today, alive, still bearing the same names. So you had all these different, so Helen was originally from Argos. And I think when she married Menelaus, then she became Helen of Sparta.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And then when she ran away with Paris, then she became Helen of Troy.
So interestingly, Venus's son Aeneas, he flees Troy after the war. Yeah. And I'm not quite sure how he's the ancestor of Remus and Romulus, who were raised by the wolves, who are the twins. And there's a whole, we won't get into that mythology now, but are the founders of Rome.
Of Rome, yeah.
But it goes back to a lot of not just choices, but I'm thinking of trauma. Going back a little bit with Venus, she was actually born out of a traumatic experience. And it would take, being Uranus being castrated is a violent action. And pardon anybody if this triggers any conversation from any of this, but it is as far as the story goes. And it is really a matter of just looking at it more from the metaphor viewpoint, symbolically, of establishing time, rather putting an end to just endless creation, to saying, no, we have an order here going. So in other words, but it still shows me how love conquers all, that through anything, we know this through the ages, and it's so current today, but in mythology too, that
definitely.
It's the wombs of the water and the
the soothing, the healing, she has soothing and healing aspects and properties to her.
And here too, with the war, that through this terrible war that has been, I know Jason Hawley goes a lot into the Trojan War. He's an astrologer here in the United States. But just as a fact that her son Aeneas flees, and I think he brings with him the Vestals, the Vestal virgins. There's a whole many different ways of looking at the mythology picture. But as far as this, if he is the ancestor of Remus and Romulus, in other words, again, Venus is saying that through her love of desire, that somehow she's giving, I guess, civilization another chance.
Definitely, because that's what she is. She is Venus represents. She's an enhancer. She's an aspect of the psyche that allows us to be able to better, to enhance. This is why she governs over partnerships and relationships, because our ability to relate with one another and share with one another, and to be able to advance and to enhance things, to better things, to make it be better, to look better, is aspects of that Venus.
Thank you. Well, her name does looking at this slide here, goes back to Venus, which is before Latin, I guess, Venas, to desire or love. But she was married to Vulcan, which we'll get into esoteric astrology in a moment, which I know you're quite involved with, who is the god of fire, or called Hesaphatus, Hesphasius, that's how you say it in the Greek way, and the god of fire. And he's an amazing god. He's not really talked about much.
Some people pronounce it Hephaestus.
Hephaestus, thank you. Okay, that's very much better. But he did many things. He created almost like an engineer through fire and welding. He did, I think, the labyrinth for Minos. And he did the just
he also made
the
owl also as well. The owl that
for Athena.
For Athena, he created the owl for Athena. He also I swear he made one of the owls, or one of the creations for what's his name as well, that went to go
Icarus?
and the one who went to go and kill the Medusa, who had to
right.
His name will come to me. I've totally forgotten, but yeah, he made something for him also as well.
Wasn't Hercules? There's Hercules, but there's also that young man who saved
Perseus. That's it. That's it.
Perseus. Thank you.
So he made also one of the old mechanical owls. He was sort of like the technology sort of guy of his time. You know, he created all these wonderful things. Yeah. So yeah.
And interestingly, now he is the one child that Zeus and Hera, or Juno, Jupiter is same as Zeus, folks, and Hera and Juno. So they have one child, and it's Vulcan, and he was lame, a lame god, and I think he got thrown out of the crib. He was rejected by Juno. So there is this. So it's interesting that he finally is married to Venus. But the reason he got married to Venus was because he was upset with his mother, and he created this beautiful throne for Juno. And of course, she was enamored with it, and she sits down, but she can't get out of it. She's stuck. So in other words, it's interesting that, in that case, that we become so enraptured with something we have to have that we can't let go of it. He did he bartered with his mother after the next day or so, or whenever, and said, okay, if you give me what I want, I'll let you out. And so she says, anything. And he says, I want to marry Venus. So of course she being the wife of consort of Zeus, had to give her Venus. So Venus didn't have much of a choice, which is also an interesting thing. I don't know if that gets into karma or what in life.
Yes.
But she, as an energy, consciousness, thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly. And they had children as well, I believe.
No, it says here that they didn't. They didn't have any children. That's the interesting part. But they stay married, so there's no point, of that. And he does create the carriage. It says that I read about from doves. But here, going into a little bit of esoteric astrology, which for people, briefly, if you see the sign, the slide here, it's our soul level. It gives us spiritual information, whereas instead of modern or psychological is more the personality. But with that said, Vulcan rules in esoterically Taurus.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. Which would make sense in on many levels, because Vulcan, Hephaestus, was a blacksmith. He was a forger. He was he worked with fire and volcanoes.
Oh yes, with fire. Thank you.
Vulcan is where we get the word volcano from. That comes from his name. So he was the god of that, and this is something very earthbound. It's a very earth, So again, we can kind of see the connection on many levels to the Taurus kind of nature, because Vulcan was very earthy, very, very hands-on, very practical.
That's right.
Creative, yeah, exactly.
Things.
Things, exactly.
Functional things.
Right,
yes.
exactly, yes.
And thank you for that too, about the earth and the volcano, because here what I was able to glean, Googling, learning about this myself, is that Taurus teaches us to help oneself and stand strong, so that there is this ability, a survival, like Taurus would be, the sense of like, okay, I have my energy, but Taurus is spirit into form.
Exactly.
So that's interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now she did have children.
Yes, she did. Yes.
And with Mars, the lover.
Yes.
And some of them were both sides, like you said, there's duality. So if we are into battle where we're just all grit out war with somebody to fight for some cause, that she had two children, fear and terror.
Phobos and Taurus.
And Metis. But then she had peace, concordia, harmonia.
Yeah, exactly.
Also.
Yeah.
And finally, the Cupids. Go ahead.
And the Cupids also as well. So I think the children of Aphrodite, Venus, they're alluring to the different aspects or manifestations also of her also as well.
Yes.
Because out of love can come fear, a fear of losing that love.
Oh boy.
Out of love we can get terror. Because
we have to change, maybe.
Exactly.
We lose ourselves, we're merging.
Right. And there also, with the balance, we can get harmonia,
Strengthen.
Exactly.
Let go of what we're weak about and strengthen with our. Oh, I love this. Israel, I'm so glad we're talking.
And the Cupids representing those different aspects of love, as you put it. So, these are all sub levels or sub extensions of who and what Venus is about. We can. So Taurus and Phobos makes perfect sense in a way.
It doesn't it? Yeah, it's both sides.
Yeah.
Now this flashes back to earlier in our conversation about Mesoamerica and the planet Venus, because this beautiful picture here, which I just love, and we only have a few minutes, I'm being reminded, so we'll tie together the best we can here. But they relate, as you said, the planet. It indicates Venus as a rising in the morning, which she will do after her conjunction in August with the sun, which is one of the Venus star points, which is a whole other conversation. I'm giving a talk actually with OPA about the Venus star point, the United States Venus star point in Scorpio, which will be July 23rd. A little plug here. But it'll be exciting. But here, these two, Kukulkan and if I can say it right, Quetzalcoatl are identified with her because of this whole process. But we'll kind of go through that, and here people can see. But it's a plumed serpent. But interestingly, here, just to say, wind and air, isn't that exactly what we were talking about with Psyche and and all of it,
the spirit,
and again, showing about Venus with the of sea and horses. That's the other thought I was thinking. Poseidon is with horses.
Horses, that's right.
Then the Troy,
with the Trojan horse. We see many of these animals and symbolical figures constantly popping up through the various mythologies.
Yes. And here I just bringing up that Venus happens to be the esoteric ruler of Gemini, which is communication. So it kind of comes full
Yeah.
circle that because it is to teach that you don't just learn the facts, you have to have compassion with it.
Right. Yes.
You know. And then once again, so we're kind of lodge on something here to tie it together, but Hermes, Mercury's child, is Hermaphroditus. Yes, which is both the androgyny of thought.
Yeah.
So, and again, she had lovers with mortals.
Oh yeah, definitely. She was actually the only goddess who mated with mortals. So, yeah.
Because we do.
Exactly. All levels. I think that shows us her connection, a spiritual connection, as much as her physical connection as well.
That's very true, because she is here. We can get rid of these, Nathan, for the last moment, because it is true. When you think about it, the father originally was the sky god Uranus, mating with Earth. So it's like, and right now Uranus is in Taurus. But we have more conversations ahead.
So she represents like a bridge between the spiritual and the physical manifestation, the physical world as well. She is the bridge that ties them together.
Thank you, Israel Ajose. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We will return. We can't help it. This is too fantastic. Have a great day, and we'll see you again. Subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests connect soul growth patterns with the energetic cycles of astrology. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.
The views expressed on this program are those of the